The LPGA Tour season begins next week with the Hill and Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions. I'm joined by Carly Lyvers, who is a communications manager at the LPGA Tour. Thanks for some of your time, Carly. How are you doing today?
Good, good. How about yourself?
Good. I'm sure that you're busy, getting ready for the 2026 season that starts next week. But just, tell me about some of the things that you and your coworkers have been doing, since the last season ended in December to now, to get ready for the 2026 season.
Yeah, gosh, we've had such a busy off season. It doesn't seem off, because we've had so many things going on, but we've just been doing a ton of work during December and January to get ready for the season and, get ready to showcase our athletes throughout the entire year. I know specifically for my team, we've been looking back on 2025, what went well, what we could do better, and getting our documents ready for 2026 and getting a lot of our processes refined too for 2026. So we're really looking forward to it, and my team's been busy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and the LPGA schedule, you only get about a month off because, you're basically almost year round because you start at the end of January next week with the, Hill and Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions, and then you go all the way through December. You have the Grand Thornton Invitational, and you have LPGA Q Series. So just you know, tell me about you being busy, January through December, and do you ever get time to take off, or mostly just, for the holidays at the end of, December?
Yeah, it's a very busy schedule. Our athletes, I think they're some of the best in the world. I'll say that probably multiple times today, but no, we're quite busy with the flow of tournaments that we have on the schedule and just a lot of the other stuff going on behind the scenes too, that doesn't even pertain to our tournament sometimes too. I like to say a lot of times, and I might say it again while we're talking at some point, but I think my job has two parts. Largely, the first one is the on-site tournament communications, doing, that day-to-day stuff, doing player interviews, player requests, working with agents, things like that. But the second part of the job is when you're at home, when you're not on the road at those tournaments, and, working internally to get those processes ready, prepare for tournaments, look back at what already happened, and also being a part of creating a communications plan, doing press releases, things like that. So we find ourselves very busy all year round, but I think the work changes, depending on what tournaments are coming up. Like you said, Hilton Grand Vacation's coming up. We're getting ready for that. But no, we stay fairly busy, I'll say. We do have a nice little break for Christmas, though.
Yeah, and the LPGA Tour has, multiple uh, Asian swings where you go to different places like Thailand and China and Korea and Japan. Do you do you travel a lot for your job? Like, do you go to Asia and go to those tournaments? How does that work? And what is it like, traveling not only around the whole US, but traveling around, the country because you even play tournaments, Scotland and places
Yeah.
like that.
Yep. No, it's one of the coolest parts about the job, I'll say, is the part where we get to travel. I mean, I started here in May of 2023, and prior to that, I never had left the country. So,
Okay.
in that short time span, I have been to so many different countries, experienced so many different cultures. I've gone to each of our Asia swings the past 2 years. So I've done spring twice, I've done fall twice. So I've really gotten to see a lot of it. And it's really cool too when you're in these places. Like, I'm a golfer, so sometimes I can bring my clubs and stay a day after and, play a cool course near there. I did that in Oregon last year. So you get the chance to see some pretty cool places, and just you'll be in parts of the world you never thought you'd be. So I think it's a
Yeah.
cool reflection, and like I said, just a really neat part of the job that we get to do.
Yes, you like, even getting to travel to different countries like Singapore or Thailand, just for example, because those are upcoming. Do you ever find yourself getting, a little tired, traveling all around the country year round or, you know, or not
Yeah,
too much?
yeah, totally. I mean, I think a lot of the times there's things here or there with different jobs that you don't love to do or anything like that. I personally, like my whole life, I've done a lot of travel. So when I was coming onto this job, that was one of the main questions I was asked, like, do you like to travel? And I grew up playing in junior golf events where on the weekends I'd live out of a hotel room. And now that's what I do sometimes for a week or 2 weeks at a time, or like you said, going to Singapore to do that. So It's a part of the job I really enjoy. Of course, it can be, tiring at sometimes, but I like to think of the other side of it too, where, like I said, I'd never been out of the country, and that this job has afforded me that opportunity to be able to go see places I never thought I'd be able to see.
Yeah, and finally about the Asian swing, I know that A, there's a lot of Asian players on the LPGA tour, and B, for you, my next question is, there's a lot of support, at least when I watch it on TV, there's a lot of support, for the LPGA tour from, these various, Asian countries like, Japan. The Japanese players played well in the LPGA tour last year. In Korea, there's a lot of Korean players, and there's a lot of support, you know, from Korea and their fans when the LPGA comes there. What's it like for you working at the LPGA tour, and when you go to these different, Asian countries, just seeing the support from all the fans for the LPGA tour?
Yeah, no, it's really awesome to see. And, I'll repeat even some of the stuff that Craig, our commissioner, has said too. Like, it was something I experienced for the first time when I came. Like I said, I'd never been out of the country. So, 2 years ago when I went to Singapore and China, I had never been to Asia at all. And so, getting to see the fan bases there and how much they love golf, and especially they love women's golf, it's just really awesome to see. I mean, the fairways are lined with people fighting to get to the front of the ropes to see. I mean, another great example I'll say too is that this past year I was able to go to the Republic of Korea to the BMW Ladies Championship, and I was on the first tee box, and I'm rather tall. And I had people behind me asking me to move so they can see the tee box. And they had Seung Kim flags and Hyoju Kim flags, and they were all part of these fan clubs. So there's huge opportunity in Asia, and it's just really cool to see that culture when you go over there. And Craig's spoken to it too when he went to the Hanwha International Life Plus Challenge last year, or Crowns last year, and he just said the same thing. Like, it was awesome to see the crowds and the fans, and then the support, like you said, especially for Korean players or for Japanese players when you go to their home countries.
Yeah, that's definitely very cool. Something else that was cool last season, the LPGA Tour was its 75th season, and you had 29 unique winners and 11 first-time winners. There were so many unique winners until, Gino won again for her second
Yeah.
time. So just tell me, what were some of your highlights, last season being, lots of unique winners, lots of first-time winners, and just being, a special, 75th season for the LPGA Tour.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there too, were some of the most awesome things I think we saw last year. We were able to celebrate a lot, I think, and I was fortunate enough to be there for a lot of those opportunities. Um, those 20, one of the things that I was kind of thinking of off the top of the head was the streak of different winners. At one point you start, like, during last season, we are like, oh my gosh, like, we haven't had a repeat winner, and then it just keeps going, and you're just like, where could this storyline take you? And I was a part of a team within our department that kept following the streak and writing. Like, I was at one point looking at all the players that had won with all rounds in the 60s and all the players that were from these countries, and I had all these like different stats going to try and find similarities between these players. And think at the end of the day, you just realize everyone's so good, and that's how we've gotten to this point too, of so many different winners. So that was a really cool moment, to look back on, especially toward the end of the season, to be like, wow, like, that happened, and you don't know when that's ever going to happen again, right? So I think that, and I think another really cool thing that always stands out to me when I look back at last season was um, Lottie Woad earning LPGA Tour status through the LPGA Elite Amateur Pathway Program. Really, really neat. I was involved heavily in that process of the communications planning and working with her and her team, behind the scenes there. And so when she finally did it and I was able to be there, it was just a really cool moment, to be able to see it. But those couple things, and like what you said too, the 75th anniversary, it was just a really special season that I was really excited to be a part of.
Yeah, you talked about Lottie Woad, but for you working in communications, when special things happen like that, like Lottie Woad turns professional, wins her first pro star at the Scottish Open, is that Rose Zhang's first, pro victory
Yeah.
at Mizuho. So just what's it like when, special things happen like that, or other things you've experienced where, it helps make your work easier, writing the stories, after the tournament, things
Yeah.
like
I
that.
were you at Mizuho when Rose won?
Yeah.
Oh, see, it was awesome. That was actually one of my first few events, and that was like one of the coolest things to see. Like you said, a special moment happened right away in my tenure here. But no, I think it's really cool. I've listened to Beth Majors say the thing before about, 80/20, about her, you go into an event having about 80% of what you think you're going to talk about, right? Those storylines, the pitches, what you're coming into the event with. And then that 20% of what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. So we can do all we can to control and be prepared and be proactive on our end of, hey, like we think, a great example is Lydia Ko with the Hall of Fame. Hey, we think she's going to get into the Hall of Fame at this tournament, but you never know. It's golf. I made a 10 last weekend when I played. I wasn't planning to do that, but you try and anticipate and plan for those things so that when it does happen, you're not caught off guard. And those are the moments that are very, very cool to witness too, because you think not only you're just super happy for the athlete and all they've been able to accomplish, but you sit back and think of the work that you did, not just this past week, but in months leading up to that event too, right? Lottie Woad and the LEAP program was months and months in the making of folks just creating that program from the beginning. And I was just happy to be a small part of, the communications around it. So those are the really some of the coolest moments I think I've had on the job. And it's awesome to be there on site for those events like you were at Mizuho.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in my upcoming questions about your specific duties. But when you're
Yeah,
referencing Beth Major, who I interviewed last month about the 80/20 rule, is your,
yeah,
because when you go into a tournament, I'm sure you know, you're interviewing in the media room, lots of notable players or big names, I'm sure the Nelly Cordes, things like that. You got to schedule time for her with the media. But then when a tournament's going on, some player plays ball or a player wins a tournament, is a lot of your work, you know, working on your feet or whatever the right word is, certain player plays well and you weren't expecting them to, not a big name, you have to get them into the media room, get them with the press. Is that, a lot of what your
yep.
work is?
Yes, yeah, no, totally. I mean, we during the week we'll have pre-tournament press conferences before the tournament actually starts. So, like you said, scheduling time with players that we think are relevant to what's going on in golf right now and, locally too, if someone's from the area or something like that. But you're right, once golf starts on Thursday, someone can go out, a rookie can go out and shoot her lowest score ever, and she's on a hot streak of having so many birdies or something like that. Like that is cool news. And that is cool to then ask her after her round and say, hey, can we grab you for a couple minutes to ask you some of those questions about your round? And then we're able to get those tidbits that not only feed us and our notes and are able to help the media, but are also able to help storylines, other content to be produced throughout the entire week of the event and even after the event, too, right? So, a great example of kind of I think what you're referring to a little bit of like that moment of like you're not planning for it is Gabby Lopez at the CME Group Tour Championship this past year. She went out, I can't even remember the round she had, but what exact score it was, but she played really, really well. And, you know, the broadcast was able to come to me and be like, hey, we have an opportunity if she wants to come in the booth, like be super awesome for her to call some shots, talk to us about her round, anything like that. And I'm like, yes, that would be so awesome. So I'm able to go to her when she gets done with her round and be like, hey, really cool opportunity to go talk more about your round and be on national television too, right? So you're right. We can't always plan for some of those things, but we can be proactive and thinking about them as they start to come up. And they're really exciting when they do.
Yeah. So now talking about the 2026 season, it will feature 31 events, 12 different countries, 13 states, and two new events: Fortinet Founders Cup, Aramco Championship, and even
Mhm.
some tournaments I know, like the Mizzou Americas Open, will now be at
Yeah.
Mountain Ridge Country Club instead of Liberty National. So just
Mhm.
tell me about some notable players and just what fans can uh, look forward to this upcoming season on the LPGA Tour.
Yeah, I mean, fans can expect a lot. I think just in the past couple weeks, we've had news of today a new partnership with BDO. We announced the other day a new CMO, Chad Coleman. The 75th anniversary program just took place and they raised $4.1 million. This is literally, we're not even at the end of January here, and there's so many cool things happening, and there'll be more things that continue to happen throughout the season. You just said you named two the events, and different countries will visit a couple new events. All that stuff is really, really exciting to see. And I would be remiss to not mention the Solheim Cup because that is one of the coolest events ever to attend. And every year that we're either planning for one or one is happening that year, it's a really special time. But that's some stuff fans can look forward to. And for players, there's so many cool players coming up, and we have 28 rookies this year. 15 players coming through Epson Tour channel, being out on the LPGA Tour this year too. It's just so exciting to hear their stories and get to know them too. Those are players that are untapped that we haven't had the chance to work with so much yet. And just the opportunity and the possibility there is really, really neat. And, of course, like you mentioned earlier, we have the Nelly Cordas, the Charlie Holes, the stars, maybe you would say, but there's so many neat players, and our athletes are simply the best. I would make the claim. So really, really a lot to look forward to this season.
Yeah, we saw it last year. Certain, countries, their players were doing well. Like, Australia, Grace Kim won a major championship.
Yeah.
They won the international crown. The Japan, excuse me, they were playing very well this
Yep.
past year. So pretty cool to see them. You were talking about the Solheim Cup. I just have to ask about that. This will be the 20th Solheim Cup in the Netherlands. I believe Anna Nordqvist and Angela Stanford will be the captains. So just for you, I see behind you, you have a lanyard with a Solheim Cup,
Yeah.
and you, I believe, worked the last Solheim Cup in Virginia. So
Mhm.
just how special is the Solheim Cup, and just tell me about this upcoming Solheim Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. I have not been to a Solheim Cup yet in Europe, so I'm really looking forward. People talk a lot about the environment there too, even on Ryder Cup sides too. The environment when you go to Europe, I've only seen it on U.S. soil, so really, really looking forward to it. I think it's just a cool, different competition, and you don't get a ton of team golf or team play or team competition in golf. So when I think it comes around, like the international crown too, like that's just really, really cool. And it's cool to see the bonds that players make in between each other too during it. But um, funny too, when I was this past year, when the Ryder Cup was at Bethpage Black, I was fortunate enough to go and be on the first tee when Angela and Anna were there. They both were doing a media hit right before the first tee shot. And to hear them not only in the media hit talk about how excited they are, but have them see people, on the ground and talk about the Solheim Cup coming up and just be around that Ryder Cup environment too. It's just really cool, and it gets you excited too for what's to come. Because again, it's golf; you don't know what's going to happen, but the Solheim Cup is just different in that way.
Yeah. So you're a communications manager at the LPGA Tour. You've been at the LPGA Tour since 2023. Just tell me about
Yeah.
some of your, job duties when you're at a tournament, when you're not at a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, going back to kind of what I said earlier about the first part of the job is on the tournaments. We have a pretty rigid schedule of what we like to follow for tournaments. Pre-tournament, tournament week, and tournament wrap up, and there's a nice flow and kind of deadlines to all that, and that's fairly rinse and repeat there too a little bit, and then you go week to week too when you're remote or you're not on the road. Excuse me. There's different things that come up your way. You're either wrapping up the last event, going through writing your recaps or things like that, and then somebody might come and be like, hey, there's a new partnership coming up, can you do the communications plan and the press release for that? So then your attention can turn to that, or that is another part of your position. So different things like that, working with our senior leadership if they have something to prepare, working with our players. We love, love, love to be a resource to players, whether it's on the road or remote. We like to be there if they have any questions, they have an upcoming media interview. We just like to be there if they should need anything. So
Yeah. Mhm. definitely. So you're the one
Yeah.
handling the press and media at a tournament. That's great.
Yes.
So
Yes.
some of your background, you're from Greenville, South Carolina, played college golf at James Madison, and you interned with JMU Athletics and the NCAA, and you've been at
Yeah.
the LPGA since 2023. So just tell me, a little bit about your experiences, and particularly what advice would you give to someone, looking to get into sports media, sports communication? And was this always your career goal, or I would guess it would be because you studied communications in college and you interned with JMU Athletics and the NCAA, but was this always your career goal?
I originally grew up I've lived in South Carolina the majority of my life, but I have lived in a couple different places, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, and South Carolina, before I went to college. So I actually grew up playing, I learned how to play golf in Mississippi. There was a very small town that we lived in, and the one of the few things that they had there was a golf course. And so I learned my parents encouraged me to go and learn how to play my pink driver, and I was able to go to the pool if I went and played nine. So I started to play golf that way. And then once we moved to South Carolina, I played a lot more junior golf, and in South Carolina and in the Carolinas in general. And so I got exposed to a lot of cool people, and there's a lot of people I know that are connected to the tour now too, or going professional or anything like that from those junior golf days, which is really cool to see. But during that time, I got recruited to go to JMU and absolutely love my time there. Really, really neat. And again, team golf, which I hadn't been a part of, was awesome there. And I got to know a lot of different people and get mentors there. But um, during during my time at school, I went to school going to be a speech language pathology major.
Okay.
I was not planning to do communications or public relations whatsoever. My mom is a communications major, and it's something like, oh, your parent does it, you don't want to do it. But I've always loved it. And I was always just like scared to do it, I think. And so COVID-19 happened during my sophomore year of college. And so I decided to change my major at that time. And I signed up for all these clubs online, like PRSSA. I was in the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. I was in so many different groups. So by the time I got back to campus, it was crazy. I was running around all over the place to go to these club meetings and whatever like that. But I absolutely fell in love with it. And I gained a lot of mentors through that. So, and I was able to try out a lot of things during that time too, of different parts of sports communication. My minor was sports communication, so I was able to try broadcasting. I was able to try statistics. I was able to try, even just doing press work. I worked for different sports. I worked for football, softball when they made their run in the NCAA championship. Like it was just cool to witness other sports and stuff like that and get my feet wet, I guess I should say. Um, so that kind of led into a mentor of mine saying, hey, there's this NCAA postgraduate internship program. I think you'd be really great for it. You should apply. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at that time. And so I tried all these different things and I was like, I can do literally anything, like whatever, put me there. But someone has to give me the opportunity. So this program was super, super awesome for that. And I was fortunate enough to land a spot in there. And even then, I was a brand strategy intern at that time in the communications department. So I had a wide range of responsibilities there too. And there were so many times I was like, can I just get in that meeting? Can I just listen to what you're saying? Because there were so many intelligent people and so many people had done really cool things in that building. So I just asked to be in those rooms. And I was lucky enough that I was let into a lot of those rooms. So at that time, when I was going to leave or getting ready to leave the NCAA, because it's a year-long program. So about that time, after 10 months or so, you sit there and you start to think about what's next. What have I learned in this whole time that I could do like in the real world, kind of, once you get out. And I wanted to do athletic fundraising. That was my next thing. I was like, I love to talk to people.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about the student athlete experience. And that's what got me to the NCAA, and that's what I wanted to keep doing. But actually, another intern within the program sent me the LPGA position, and all she knew about was that I was communications and that I knew how to play golf. She didn't know anything else about what I wanted to do or anything like that. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, let's fill it out. This would be so, so cool. But what are the odds this happens, you know? And so, sure enough, I got the call and was able to, interview and everything like that. And it was just, it's been awesome ever since. Clearly, I'm here now, and I was able to have the manager position or receive the manager position last year. So it's been really, really cool. But the reason I kind of lay all that out is um, not just to talk a little bit more, but to say, everyone's journey looks very different. And I think that's one of the things I've seen a lot in sports is that everyone comes to the same spot a little differently sometimes too, and you end up thinking you want something and then you try it and you really don't like it, but you wouldn't have known that unless you tried. So I think my four main takeaways that I have right now at this point in my life, because I'm still fairly young and I'm still going to learn more things in the future, right? But I think number one, you should always, always, always pursue something you're passionate about. Because if you do that every day, you will wake up really eager to do anything, whether it's your favorite task of the job or your least favorite task of the job, because you understand the goals and the mission of the organization and the purpose you're working toward, right? I think that's my number one thing I always say. I think two, I always go back to, it's always great to be a learner. You never want to say you're the smartest person in the room, and you want to admit, like you can't always know everything, right? But I love to pick the brains of people that know more things than I do because I will learn stuff, like I'll learn something from this conversation that we're having right now because we're talking and I've never met you before, right? Like it's very, very
Yeah.
cool to always be curious. Another really cool thing I always get back to was during my time at the NCAA, I did a lot of things that I never probably would have done. Like I put myself out there a ton. And I had a mentor there that said, you want to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I remember the first time hearing that and being like, what does he mean by that? But you got to put yourself out in some of these ways to break into the industry. And I think that's a theme you hear a lot from a lot of people that have had success too, not only in golf or in sports, but you're going to have to do things along the way that you're not going to love. But from that process, you will grow and you will learn. And that's how you end up where you are. And last thing, too, I think I'd just say is even since getting here now, the sports world is so small and there's so many connections amongst so many people. Like, just that I'm here now, I end up in all these different cities, like you said, and I hear that someone from here went to JMU, and I hear this LPGA Tour player played with a girl I played with in junior golf. Like, everyone's so connected. So, your reputation and how you carry yourself is so important. And the work you do is so important because it travels around. Think of the network that you've had. You've had like so many interviews and so many people you've gotten to talk to, and you've probably learned a ton. And now all those people know you, and we all have that connection, whether we knew it or not, that we talk to you. So just very, very cool. And I think, sports brings a lot of people together in a lot of ways, and everyone's journey can look a little different through it.
Yeah, definitely. Two more things that I wanted to ask, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, you played college golf at JMU, James Madison. So what advice would you give to an aspiring college golfer?
Oh yes, I really had like the best time at JMU. It was, the environment there was really cool, and I fell in love since the first minute I stepped foot on campus. I don't know if it was the environment or like the chance to have more purple in my closet. I don't really know what it was, but it was really neat. And aspiring college golfer, I was
Like, why'd
recruited
you
in high.
from South Carolina, why'd you choose JMU?
Yeah, so I wanted a school. My parameters at the time were, since I didn't know fully what I wanted to do degree wise, I didn't focus too much on that. I wanted something that had strong academics, but that wasn't mainly my main focus. But I wanted a school that I wasn't super close to home. Like I didn't know people really that were going there because I wanted to kind of push myself. And where I am from in South Carolina, everyone either went to USC, South Carolina, or they went to Clemson. And a couple people scattered around there. But I knew I didn't want to go to those two schools because of that reason. But on the other side of things, I wanted to not be so far away. If my mom wanted to come see me, she can get there in a day. I didn't want it to be more than a plane ride, or more than an 8 hour drive. I think it was 6 hours. But I wanted that like somewhat distance to be able to grow and kind of learn how to live a little bit, on my own. But aspiring college golfer too, I think you can't take it for granted too, because I look back and I'm like, man, those were the best times. Like I had 4 seasons and really only three because of COVID that I just had the best time with my teammates. And it's funny, like some of them are still my best friends, but we didn't pick each other. We always say too, like your coach basically picked you all and didn't plan for you to be friends, but you're friends. And you all come together for a common goal. And I think it really reflects playing any sport and being dedicated to it and pursuing it is a reflection of like your work too and what you put toward in your work. So um, for aspiring college golfers, I think wherever you go, like there's a lot of opportunity to always run with it. And I saw it a lot at the NCAA, but there's so much power in being a student athlete at the high school level or at the college level because places of work want to see that on a resume and they know what that that word student athlete comes with because they know it comes with a lot of hard work and dedication. So yeah, I go for it if you got the chance. That's
Yeah.
my number one advice because it was the coolest time in my life.
Yeah. And finally, I was interested, for my final question, I was interested I read this when doing my research. The LPGA Tour is the world's longest run women's professional sports organization. So for you, just hearing that, what is it like working at the LPGA Tour? Being one of the longest running or the longest running professional women's sports organizations, and just what are some of your favorite memories you've had working at the LPGA Tour since 2023?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a surreal experience too. And when you hear that as well, like I heard that phrase so many times during the 75th anniversary year, right, of the longest running women's sports organization and just really cool to be a part of it. I think I have a lot of like wow moments on the job for me personally because I grew up playing golf. And so, some of these players, I was like watching them on TV. I was, trying when social media came out, I was trying to be like follow them first, and like, I remember when Lexi's like Instagram page came out and that was like a big deal. And like we were all trying to follow and see what they were doing and stuff. To now, like, being able to talk to them after their rounds or see them in dining and they go like, "Hey Carly, like how you doing?" or whatever like that. Like I just have so many of those moments where it's like, wow, I'm really here. Like I'm really committed to the mission of what we're doing at the LPGA and to be able to contribute to not only the last 75 years, but hopefully hoping to the work that I do contributes to the next 75 years is just really, really neat. And I think for my moments, I mean, I always go back to, I remember my first event. Like I had my first interview with Gemma Dryberg. I don't know if you follow her at all, but really, really neat. She just had a
What
little
was your
baby.
what was your first tournament?
It was the Cognizant Founders Cup. It was a tournament before Mizuho in
Oh, okay,
2023.
in New Jersey.
Yes, yep, in New Jersey. And I have a picture of me doing the first interview ever with her and really cool. I remember, Rose winning at Mizuho, very, very cool. I have I always think back to that first flight, international flight, because I had gone overseas and so
I'm
sitting on my
sure
plane.
Solheim Cup in Virginia was pretty cool in 24.
Yes. Oh, very cool on 24. I mean, first trip to Asia being very cool too, And I think, I people don't love when I say this too, but I always say like there's something every tournament I've worked, there's something really cool I look back on and go like that was awesome to see. Like a Rolex first time winner. Like that is a life-changing moment for somebody and that is really cool to see. So I've got a lot of little moments sprinkled through there. Maybe one of them too, I'll say too, is like when a legend or something like that is I get a call from them and a Nancy Lopez or a Pat Bradley, some of those like just really knowledgeable players. It's just really cool to be a part of the organization, and I'd run through a brick wall for them. So really, really cool for to be here.